This'll be a slaughter!
Alright, welcome to episode 3 of the Champion Judgment. This one will be featuring your boy Tryndamere, the one everyone hates. My name is Chris, and joining me is my friend Jason.
All right, yeah, this is one I've wanted to do for a long time, and I'm excited to do it. Can't wait to see what you came up with.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see how ours will be differ and similar again. First off, we'll just, go through the motions and just talk about his current state a little bit before we jump into the design things. I'll be doing mine first this time since we did Jason's first last time. We'll just go back and forth.
And his current state is not good.
Yeah, I feel like there's not a whole hell of a lot to say that hasn't already been said or everyone doesn't already, know in their heart. It's just how stat checky he is, how one-dimensional he is, how just unexciting he is to play, how unsatisfying he is to play against, how little counterplay there is to play against him. He's just such a one-dimensional champion.
Is there anything you like about him?
Well, in a vacuum, I think some of the things in his kit are interesting. For instance, I did try to save some of the things in his kit, like I did with all of my reworks so far, but I have done a full-on rework, not only in his abilities, but the type of champion he is. My Tryndamere is not like an 80 carry, essentially, like Tryndamere is now. I kept the Fury system, and a couple other things, though.
Yeah, I went the kind of Juggernaut Bruiser route with him, and I think that's really the only type of champ that he should be.
Me too.
So, I mean, well done, because that is the correct way to go with Tryndamere, I think. I do think there is an underrated amount of skill expression in Tryndamere's kit, especially for a 2010 champ. His spin actually has a lot of really cool uses to it. The way that you kind of wait up and engage in fights is interesting. I think he's a little bit underrated in his design in that aspect, and I also like that his abilities are very simple to understand.
A little too simple.
They don't take 26 lines to explain what he does. Yeah, he's a good duelist after the mid game, and look, right-click champs can be a lot of fun if they have a lot of movement. The Master Yi's, the Vanes, Trin himself. You said he's not that fun to play and not fun to play against. He's definitely not fun to play against. I think some Trin players enjoy playing him.
Well, if you're a Trin player, yeah, you enjoy playing him.
Yeah. With that said, I have almost a page worth of elements that I think are problematic with him, and half of that page is his ultimate.
I don't really think it's that complicated. He's just such a binary champion. It's just not.
He definitely is a binary champion. That ultimate is just so annoying and dissatisfying to play against. My stupid teammates are always hitting an ulting Trin because he has a low health bar. Even though there's 3 other nearby enemies to hit. It allows him to use the Scion style split pushing, where you just face roll and attack the turret without even caring what your enemies are doing. There's no indicator for even telling you how long that ultimate will last. But besides his ultimate, I think there are a lot of problems in his kit. His passive has a really strange exponential curve, where you both gain Fury for each critical strike, alongside gaining critical strike chance per Fury. So if you hit that first crit just with RNG, it'll increase the chance of further crits in that fight, which I think is very bad design. There's the fact that you can build up the Fury so easily on minion waves rather than having to interact with anyone. There's the fact that he often feeds before level 6, making him an even more frustrating teammate to have.
Oh, I just realized you're reading off of the top part of your thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I said, there is a laundry list. He has attack damage reduction in his kit, which is just really weird. and takes a large part of the Mocking Shot's power budget without actually feeling visceral or feeling like you're doing anything good. Yeah, he's basically forced into brainless crit builds because his ultimate gives him a fixed amount of survival time rather than an amount of survival time based on his HP like every other champion in the game. Not to mention his passive. Yeah, he's only got one damage skill, which I didn't even realize until we actually did this. Until we spent time figuring out how we're going to rework the champ. What kind of raging barbarian has one damage skill?
Did you forget that he's Ash's bitch?
I did not forget that he's Ash's bitch. I was going to end with that. I mean, we know who wears the pants in that relationship. And it's the one that leads all the Avarosans and shoots arrows like she has a minigun.
Wow.
As I was... Go on, what?
Go on.
Okay, and the other thing that I think that's kind of interesting, a few of the skills that I started to come up with and then scrapped because I realized that Olaf already did that, made me realize that Olaf just does the Raging Barbarian theme better than Tryndamere does right now. So, a few of the skills that I came up with, I actually just decided to scrap because Olaf did it better already. And I eventually came up with what I think is a pretty cool way for him to be a Raging Barbarian in a totally different way than Olaf.
Yep, I think I kind of tried to achieve the same thing, sort of.
All right.
Mine makes a complete 180. Mine makes a complete 180 on all things Tryndamere, essentially.
Interesting.
I have gone from a dedicated split pusher to, he's still good 1v1, but now my guy is a dedicated team fighter. First,
ooh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
First off, my guy has... I did some stat changes. I noticed you were dicking with the stats in the first two ones, so I messed with the stats too. My guy now has the most HP in the game at 18, which is above Galio and Silas, as I typed in there. He doesn't have as much as Kled, because Kled is special and crazy like that, so he's not that crazy. And then I gave him the same regen at level 1 that Vi and Darius have, because they have the highest in the game. And then I did the attack range increase, except mine's even crazier than what they did, but I'll explain why that's okay later. So mine's 225, which is amongst the craziest in the game for melee people. But it's okay, because it's not silly. We'll explain why that's not insane when we get to his Q.
Alright.
Okay, now this is pretty much his bread and butter ability that kind of makes his whole kit kind of go together. This is his new passive, Brothers and Sisters, and what it does is he gains... he takes reduced damage and does increased damage based on the amount of allies that are near him. So 1 to 4, and it goes from 2.5% to 10%, and then that increases to 5 to 20%, so it doubles per stack for every ally that's currently dead next to him. So while they're alive, he gets a little bonus, and then when one of his allies falls, he gets another bonus. And
that's not thematic with his lore.
And that bonus is doubled each time or when an ally recently dies next to him. And that stacks, and it lasts for... Each one's only like 5 seconds. So basically what I'm saying is this could be anywhere from 2.5% to 10% to all the way to 10 to 40 if he's the last person standing and all 4 of his teammates die before him. And the stacking effect goes off every 5 seconds for a maximum of 20. And then for all these to happen, they have to be within a 3,500 range of him, which is extremely generous. So for like a team fight, a circle kind of thing.
Yeah, that's almost like a third of the way from like one lane to another, right?
Yeah, as long as you're like in the area, but obviously you're not going to get this bonus if you're on like the other side of the damn map,
Yeah.
All right, and then the second half is whenever he gets the empowered effect from an ally dying, he cleanses himself of any CC, and he gets a shield equal to some of the stats of the ally that dies, whether that's 10% of their max HP, 20% of their AD, or 30% of their AP. All 3 of those, because different champs are going to have more of that value, and then he'll get a little shield of that for the 5 seconds of the empowered effect. And then, I know you might hate this, but I did keep a little tiny bit of his ultimate where for 1.5 seconds after one of his ally dies, he can't be reduced below 1% of his max HP. Now, it's only 1.5 seconds, but it does stack if more than one of his allies dies for only a total of like 6 seconds. But that's only if every one of his allies dies, which I think is much more warranted and less stupid than it is currently.
If 2 allies were to die at the same time, would he get 1.5 seconds or 3 seconds?
3.
Okay. So it's not like it refreshes, it actually like fully stacks.
Yes, and so does the shield that he gets from everyone's stat bonuses too. So this means if his whole team gets wiped, he'll stand to get the biggest buff when he's the last man standing each time.
And you said that the maximum he'd be able to theoretically get in a team fight would be 40% reduced damage and increased damage?
If all 4 of his allies were next to him and they all died, then yes, he would get 40%.
So you finally have a use for your inting Nidalee now.
But you see how it ramps up whether they're alive, whether they're dead, and whether they died right next to him. So you get that ramping effect.
I mean, combined with an already like very high HP level, like he's going to be a tanky boy in these fights.
Yep, and that's his passive. That is his passive really works into his ultimate. We'll explain on that later. And the rest of his abilities are a little more straightforward. I just had to explain his passive because it's something unique in the game, but I don't think it's there's no precedent for it with how action like revives people and stuff like that. So I don't think this is too crazy because there's been abilities in the past that gave an effect based on the amount of champions that were around. For instance, Aurelia used to have a passive that gave her more tenacity based on enemy champions that were next to her, so none of this is unprecedented. Okay, next up we got his Q, Reckless Slash, and there wasn't really a good place to put this, so as the passives for his Q, I merely explain how his Fury and how his auto attacks work. So instead of being a dedicated auto attacker, he only can auto attack every 2 seconds, and that's locked the entire game. No ifs, ands, or buts, no faster reloading like Jhin or Graves or anything. He only auto attacks every 2 seconds.
Okay, that's a little similar to what I did with Malphite last time. And
he also cannot critically strike, but every one of his autos will deal 150 to 200% of his AD, and that's based directly at levels 1, 6, 11, and 18. So those are the breakpoints of his ultimate, and when he hits, he'll hit obviously more than his total AD, but he's obviously not going to go smacking you super hard or whatever. And that's why I gave him the incredible buff to his basic attack range.
Okay, that makes sense. To be clear, he still has this this kind of different auto, even if he has not leveled his Q at level 1.
Yes, this I had to just put this somewhere, so I put it on his Q. Yes, this is a
mechanic.
mechanic.
I would put it as a second passive, but yeah.
This is merely just stating how his auto attacks function. Just like if you look up Senna's wiki, there's like a separate section where it explains how her auto attacks function. Okay, and then the next part just explains his Fury, except there's a twist. Now, he always gains 1 Fury every second when his auto attack is off cooldown, which means when he has an attack for the 2 seconds or whatever, it starts ticking up slowly to 100, instead of him having to kill stuff constantly to get it to 100. But it also goes up every time he auto attacks champion and kills stuff like normal. I didn't really tweak that too hard because I didn't find that particularly problematic, and it's a natural way of it like ticking up. But the fact that his Fury always ticks up innately when he's not autoing, I like that. So that's the part I added.
No, I don't want to like spoil myself by scrolling through, but is there some way he spends the Fury, or that it decays, or does it just keep rising forever?
His Fury never decays, and that's part of the balance about how it slowly gets to 100. And yes, he does.
So he's going to spend it.
He does spend it, and he is balanced around his downtime of when he gets to 50 and 100 and stuff.
All right, we'll see how that works.
Okay, now this is his bread and butter damage skill, and basically it's pretty simple. He uses 5% of his current HP, and then he just slashes diagonally in front of him for 50 to 150 plus the current damage of his passive. So this basically scales not only with ranks in this ability, but ranks in the breakpoints of his passive that modifies his auto attack range. And think of it as kind of like Pike's ultimate, but just half of that, and 500 range directly in front of him, like in a line. Kind of like Aatrox, but faster, so more consistent. And this also applies on hit effects, so this would be really good with like Divine Sunder or something like that. Because my guy's not based around critical strike whatsoever.
Alright.
Then, if he's at 50 or more Fury, he does strike a second time, and it does make like a little X pattern. But, similar to Yorick's Q, he can only do the double strike within the cooldown of a regular strike. So it's like slash, and then if he's at 50 while the Q's on cooldown, he can do another slash. Just like Yorick can only do the raise the minions after whacking people with the shovel cooldown. And so there's precedent for that kind of mechanic in the game too. And when he uses the double strike, he'll lose 25 of his fury.
Okay, and you just pay the 5% current HP cost twice?
Yes.
Okay, interesting.
And that has an 8 to 6 second cooldown. I didn't want it to get too low, but this is his bread and butter damage ability. And it should scale pretty well, considering it'll be based on his his passive and stuff.
How easy or hard would you say this would be to avoid?
This will be this will be like faster than like Allow Q. This will be pretty hard to avoid.
Okay, unless you're like a blink chant that can predict it.
Yeah,
you're not gonna get out of it.
Yeah, but it'll be so bread and butter to his kit. You'll know that he's going to do it basically like in a line in front of him. It's not exactly a line though. Think of it more like Diana's Q, where it's kind of like twirls a bit.
Diana's Q is so weird.
Yeah, it's not curvy. Yeah. This is like just a straight slash, but it'll be from his right to his left, and then from his left to his right. Think of it like that. That's an easier way of thinking about it.
Okay, so maybe the way you avoid it is you stand in the right place.
Yeah, technically, yeah, that would work. You'd have to really clean up the hitbox for that to work, though, because for it to only be like from his left to his right by the size of his champion, it would be kind of a small window to dodge.
Yeah.
Okay, now the rest of his kit is actually pretty simple. This is one of my favorite abilities. Next up, we got Cloud of Anger. This is like his utility spell, and this one's pretty interesting. This works very similar to Warwick's E. For the next 2 to 6 seconds, based on ranks, he'll take 15 to 30% reduced damage from all sources, and that stacks with the damage reduction from brothers and sisters, whatever that might be. So this could be as high as 35 plus the 40% he gets from brothers and sisters. Yeah.
Okay.
So this could be as high as 75%, but obviously all these things only last for like a couple seconds, and that the damage reduction from brothers and sisters, that's very niche. Like, the best case scenario would be for him to die last and for all of his teammates to actually be present and in range of the effect of his passive. So this is all very situational, but he does have that, like, you know, top of the mountain moment where if all things line up, this could be pretty cool. And then also this functions similar to like Tom Kench's his shield, where this can be reactivated and automatically at the end of it. And if it does, it grants Tryndamere and all of his nearby allies a shield for an amount equal to the damage reduced by this ability for 3 seconds. And if any allies are around him, it splits the entire shield between every ally in range. And it's a huge range. Now, because this is like Locket of the Iron Solari on steroids, this has a monstrous cooldown. It's like 60 to 40 seconds. But this also costs 25 Fury. The upside is, if he's at 100 Fury, this comes off of cooldown 3 times as fast. Now, what makes this balanced is it only lasts for 3 seconds, and if you're splitting this between 5 people, everyone will get a much smaller shield. But if he's by himself, obviously this shield can get extremely ridiculous for 3 seconds.
Interesting.
So this makes it good when he's in a 1v1, but also makes it useful when he's in a big team, because he can give everyone a shield for like a few hundred. But if he's by himself and everyone's dogpiling him, then he can give himself like a giant shield for like just a couple seconds also.
Yeah, I also kind of like the choice that you're presenting the player between using a clutch shield on allies, you know, as they're about to die.
That's
versus,
right. Because you can reactivate
on that to get a bigger shield at the end of the ability.
That's right, yeah. So you can end it early if you know someone needs it for, like, Ignite, for example.
Yeah. There's also kind of like a wicked little, pyrrhic choice that you're forcing the enemies to make, which is, do I kill Tryndamere's allies? And then he gets the big bonus for the allies dying,
Or
or do I
another,
target Tryndamere himself, and then he gets a bigger shield for him and his allies?
or another
There-
choice is: do we risk damaging him while he has the damage reduction up from Cloud of Anger?
yeah, do you
Because
even like risk it at all? That's true.
yeah, so
If he's already at like 50-60% damage reduction between the two effects, yeah, maybe it's not even worth it to hit him.
yes, but all those things are very situational and don't last for very
Yeah.
long unless they all stacked up perfectly.
And then,
So
okay.
his baseline is nice, but his peak is very generous.
Yeah.
Do you have another question?
No other questions. Tell me about the E.
Okay, this one is kind of like Poppy's, but not quite. I would compare it more. I mentioned here that... Okay, I'll just read it. So he becomes ghosted, so he doesn't run into shit. He gets a bit of a movement speed boost, so this isn't anywhere near as fast as his current dash. This is just basically him moving faster while he's doing the charge. And he goes a fixed distance in a line, basically, in the same way that he kind of... You drive left and right with Scion and Nunu, is how this is going to react or control the same way, except it'll be much faster than theirs, because theirs is kind of slow and sluggish. So this is like his escape and also his like CC ability. So if he hits an enemy champion with this has no scaling whatsoever. This will always do 15% of his max HP. So this will be kind of a chunk in the early game, and then as he scales into more of a bruiser tank, this should hit like more of a truck kind of ability in the late game. But this purposely has no scaling, essentially, in terms of damage, to make it more appealing to max his W second. So you don't have to worry about maxing this or his W unless you want the cooldown. And then, when he runs into them, they get knocked back like Alistair's headbutt for 3 seconds, but they get slowed, so he can still close the distance if he doesn't hit someone. And then, like what something Alistair should have, if he knocks them into terrain or if he knocks them into another champion, they'll be stunned for half the duration, so it's only a 1.5 second slow.
Interesting. It feels like you're creating a tank here, like even more than a bruiser.
And then this also costs 25 Fury, so Fury management is a big thing in his kit. Like, he can't just go willy-nilly with the Qs, and it is going to be important when he has the downtime of letting his Fury tick up from not auto-attacking to use these abilities, which I think is the part of his kit that balances him the most. And this ability has a pretty long cooldown, because I just think that the 15% of his max health I think will be pretty strong in the late game, so... And this is like his only kind of mobility spell, and his only CC spell, so I wanted this to have more of a much longer cooldown. And then if he does stun someone, though, he gets the Fury back. So this combos well with him not using too much, so he still has enough for Cloud of Anger and to do more chop suey action with the Q.
Yeah, if it were me, I might even go longer than the 18 to 14 that you seem to have gone with here.
Not too crazy, because this still needs to be part of like his regular trading combo.
Yeah, that's
Unlike
fair.
Cloud of Anger, which is like a game-breaking, or not game-breaking, but a game-changing, team fight-changing like shield power thing. Kind of like Seraphine's W, but a little stronger. And then, just like Lee Sin's ultimate, if he can hit another champion with the first champion who's a projectile, both of them will get stunned and damaged for the same amount. So it kind of is like a little goofy, pinball mechanic kind of thing.
Okay, so terrain or another enemy champion. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, 1.5 second stun and 15% of this like very tanky boy's max HP and physical damage, which might be, 40% of his target's HP in physical damage, which will obviously be reduced a little bit. Yeah, that seems really powerful.
Yeah, but it makes up for the fact that his W doesn't do any damage, and his Q,
That's true.
he can only do the double Q so much on his...
It's a cool ability. It's a cool ability. It's very powerful.
Okay, now we got the fun one. His ultimate, his new one, Inevitable Onslaught. And check this out. This is going to be active. Well, I'll just read it. Each time one of Tryndamere's allies dies, and this is globally, this is separate from his passive. It doesn't give him the empowered effect, but it keeps track of each time one of his allies dies globally, or when he gets a takedown on an enemy champion like in the laning phase, or when he gets a kill off of a dragon or Rift Herald or Baron. He gets a stack.
I went with epic monsters too.
Yeah, or he stores a charge of Onslaught, and each charge will contain 10% of the stats of the target, but only in terms of HP, AD, AP, armor, and MR. And all these stacks can be stored right at level 1, so he benefits from the level 1 buffoonery. So he starts getting stacks at level 1, but he can only activate this at level 6. Now comes the fun part. So as soon as he activates this, he'll immediately gain 100 Fury. He'll slow all enemies around him by almost instant, by like 99% for 1.5 seconds. There's a few abilities in the game that do that, like Sets and Volibear. And then he'll deal, and this is just meant to be like a pathetic amount, he'll deal 100 to 300 based on rank magic damage, and that's so he can utilize the AP he gets. And that's why this has a 200% AP scaling. And then after 1.5 seconds, he consumes all the charges he currently has of Onslaught, and he gains those stats as his own for 15 seconds, which gets extended every time one of his allies dies and triggers the empowered effect of brothers and sisters. This has a pretty long cooldown. So he gets, now it's only 10% of all of their stats, so for some enemies this is only going to be like a pittance depending on the stat that they're focusing on. And then here's the really juicy part. When this times out, he keeps 1/10 of all the stats he gained permanently. So that's
okay. So 1% of the target that died stats.
Exactly. So over time, this will allow him to bank up a juicy amount of bonus.
So overpowered in bronze.
I did the math on this. It doesn't actually get too silly unless you're killing like Rammus and Malphite like 12 times late game.
I'm just saying, some of these bronze games are like 58 to 53.
So this will allow him to bank up a nice little juicy nest egg of stats while he's still soloing top lane or in the jungle still or whatever. And when shit's going off across the map, he'll still be banking up the charges when he finally does choose to activate this. Plus, it'll make him really think about when he wants to invest all the charges he's gained. At the same time, it'll encourage him to use the active effect, so he'll start keeping 1% of each of the stats of the character that triggered the charge in the first place.
So you have like a pretty mild form of permanent stacking here. And then obviously, once you get the stack, you can use a much more powerful version of that stack, during the actual active of the ult, and then you keep it.
It's
Sorry,
not...
when I say much more powerful, I mean then the amount that you actually keep permanently.
No, the amount he gets when he activates it is the same amount that was stored per champion.
Right. Yep. I understand that. I just said it clumsily. Okay, so yeah, it's a lot of bonus stats for a short time. The longer he can just keep stacking up, the more he's going to be able to actually get during his active. Is there, you tell me, is there any danger that a Tryndamere literally just like spends the first like 30 minutes of the game stacking, never uses his ult, never even levels his ult, and then just becomes like unstoppable in one very important like Baron fight near the end?
Well, the way I designed this is there's no toxic thing Tryndamere can do himself, because he only gets charged when his allies dies or when he gets takedowns. So it'll still encourage him to play legit and still try to dominate his lane and take objectives and stuff like that. So no toxicity on his part.
I'm not saying he's trying to enter anything.
Now you said it'll make him not want to put points in his ultimate. No, that's not true, because putting a point in his ultimate only lets him use the active. He'll still put charges into this, and it'll still dictate the cooldown. And the cooldown is kind of longish, especially at level 1, because it is a good ability. Now, I hear what you're saying, and yes, it is going to create a kind of decision-making about when you want to bank all the charges you've contained. And I think that's a cool thing about it. If you want to save it and have a really cool moment where you have this 15 seconds of awesomeness that gets extended if you get more takedowns, or if you need it for the fight because it also slows and you need the burst damage from the small
That's true. There is a lot of utility in the slow.
the small magic damage explosion in the very beginning.
Uh-huh.
And over time, because I gave it such a high AP ratio, he'll able to make use of the AP he's banked from allies or takedowns of champions that had AP. So it'll have more utility outside of just banking it forever and ever and ever. But at the same time, the fantasy will remain of banking up a lot of stuff.
Yeah. I still think there will be. Yeah, you're kind of convincing me that you know, the people who would be like banking it for 30 minutes before they use it are probably trolling. Which is kind of funny anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you'll have a really fun time having that much stats for that one window, but at the same time, that also means you went
that one fight worth the whole game.
Yeah, but not only that, but it also means that you took 30 minutes before you cashed in those charges to get the 10th to get the 1% permanently. So the whole game you just you never banked in on those bonus stats you would have gotten until 30 minutes. So this makes it more sense to want to use it at a more consistent rate with other champions ultimate, so you keep banking up those bonus stats to use the whole game, because you're not getting any of them if they just sit in his little charge pool.
Yeah, well, I definitely you know, see your love for fat slobs in what you've designed here. Because I think that you really have turned Tryndamere into a tank, and a pretty cool tank at that, I gotta say.
He's definitely tankier, but I think there's still plenty of room to build him like full bruiser at the same time, especially with the bonus stats that he'll be getting.
Yeah. I mean, the bonus stats will let him, as a full tank, basically, you know, temporarily turn into a, you know, a more dangerous champion.
Plus,
But between the...
I think his Q is like on a low enough cooldown, and it'll have enough uptime to where he'll still have like good trading potential.
Were you imagining there being a lot of damage on the Q? Because I don't think you gave a number here.
Oh, the number is 50 to 150 plus the current damage of his modified.
That's a damage. Okay.
Yeah, plus his modified auto attack.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of low bruiser territory. But I think that he just provides so much utility and disruption and tankiness in this current form that his highest best use is going to be as a team fight tank, from what I'm reading of yours. And it's very interesting. It's not what I would have ever envisioned for Tryndamere, but it would make for a cool champ. So, what will I give this?
I'm very proud of this one.
Yeah, I definitely like it. The abilities go together well. It would be a very useful champ to have in your team. In my opinion, there's probably too much total power here, and it's not totally what I would imagine for Tryndamere, so I will say a 7.5. But I think if this were just a regular champ design that you were to come to me with, and it wasn't a rework of Tryndamere, I'd go even higher than that.
Damn, I was hoping to get an 8 or 9 out of you. You said it has too much power.
Yeah, I think, you know, obviously the numbers can be played with, but I think, you know, if it came out as written here, this would be in an overpowered state for sure.
What part of it do you think is too strong? Do you think the W is too strong?
I think the combination of the extra HP with the percent damage reduction, particularly that it stacks additively rather than multiplicatively, combined with the 15% of his max HP, as damage and the 1.5 second stun, I think those are the parts of the kit that I think kind of all come together to probably be overpowered. I've not always been right about these things, so it'd be interesting to hear what our beloved commenters think.
Yeah, I feel like I gave the cooldowns enough to where his DPS wouldn't be so high to make him too consistently dangerous, but he has these like higher cooldown, more impactful moments outside of his Q.
Yeah, I mean, I think that some of the abilities are powerful enough that I would even give it higher cooldowns with the exception of the W. But that doesn't mean that these abilities aren't cool. that the kit doesn't work well together, because it does. And what I found really interesting is that we actually ended up going for a lot of the same things at a surface level, but we created two completely different champs.
Oh, that's always
So
interesting.
yeah. So like for example, I also got rid of his crit synergies. I also kept the Fury, um, and reduced the amount of time, at least at a minimum, that he would be invulnerable for. Um,
Oh, you kept that? I'm surprised you were bitching about that so much. I'm surprised you kept that. Mine was just a
I
small caveat to the old days.
I was actually able to keep a lot of function in Tryndamere, but I changed the way that it all flows together, or at least I hope that I did. I felt like there was a lot to salvage from his kit, in opposition to like Malphite, where it's like every one of his current skills is kind of boring, and we made him into something very different and very cool. I'm not sure you're gonna love what I did, but should I get to it, or was there anything else you wanted to say on your very cool version?
Ah, just that it was really cool, especially the passive.
Yeah, I
I,
know you were telling me for weeks how proud you were of it, and I can see why.
I really like the passive in the ultimate, and I just love how much decision making with the W. It's just real
The
cool.
passive is particularly cool, and I think it like feeds into his lore very well, with the idea that he's trying to avenge his brothers and sisters.
Well, he is like the leader of a tribe, right?
Was.
Oh, I thought, isn't
He
he?
was one of the few survivors.
Oh, he's a survivor. I thought he was the king of some tribe with Ash was the queen and stuff, right? I don't
Um, that was definitely his old lore. I'm not sure
know.
whether
Okay.
that part was kept in his new lore.
Okay.
His new
Well.
lore, most of his tribe was killed by Aatrox.
Okay. Whatever. They change that lore every 2 years.
I know, but he's still Ash's bitch. Oh man, he is so bamboozled. Anyhow, so one of the things I went the other way than you. I actually gave him minus 150 health for the stat changes at level 18. I gave him minus 5 movement speed, and part of the reason for that is because I did give his skills more mobility.
Okay, that's a right change.
Change in one direction, and another similar change in the other direction. Um, his new passive is called Battle Fury. Very original, right? Um, I basically just changed the way that he gains Fury, so and what the Fury does. So Tryndamere is going to gain 5 Fury up to 100 every time he deals damage to an enemy champion or an epic monster. So no minions, no regular jungle creeps, with an attack or an ability. So the abilities will give you Fury now. And 10 Fury for takedowns on champions or epic monsters. Abilities can proc Battle Fury multiple times, so spoiler alert, he still has a spin. If you spin into multiple people, you will get Fury for each one. And Tryndamere loses 5 Fury per second after he's failed to gain Fury for 5 seconds. So this is really meant to be for one fight, or one like extended trade as you stack it up. Tryndamere's AD and AP are increased by either 1% or 1, whichever is greater, for every Fury he has. So to be clear, I'm not encouraging him to build
Oh.
AP. The idea of this is that he's going to be getting a bunch of extra AD, percentage-wise, and he will be getting some extra AP just for the Fury, even if he's building 0 AP. And the purpose of that is basically to allow his skills to become stronger without his auto attacks becoming too much stronger. This new look of Battle Fury will reward fights and extended trades rather than just cheaply generating it on a wave. It rewards the aggressive use of your abilities rather than running away from people. And it no longer forces nor encourages cheesy crit builds. I also think that because you're able to stack the Fury on epic monsters just by attacking them, it'll make him a menace in the objective fights, which would be a cool fantasy that Juggernauts don't usually get to live. So, not such big changes yet. But the biggest change that I'm going to make is an entirely new queue, and this is a choose-your-own-adventure called Path of Destruction. It's got a 20 to 14 second cooldown based on rank. And basically, it is a series of dashes with a short distance and a speed equal to his movement speed plus 200. Just for reference, that is slower than most dashes in the game. So the way this works, for your first activation, Tryndamere slightly dashes either forward, 30 degrees left, or 30 degrees right, based on where you click when you use your Q. Swinging his sword in that direction as well. If he swings it to the side, he'll kind of swing in an arc, in the direction that you have chosen to dash. And Tryndamere will deal 30 to 270, based on rank, plus 100% AD, plus 70% AP, physical damage, and applying a small slow, 15% for 1 second to all enemies hit. However, if you hit no enemies nor terrain with that side swing, Tryndamere will continue to run in that direction for half a second, and during that time you can cast that skill again using his new bearing. So for example, if you swing to the left, then he'll continue to run partially to the left for half a second, and then your new choices will essentially be like left, very far to the left, or what was originally straight. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so that stops people from just immediately turning around to change it.
Exactly. You're not going to be able to use this to just like fake someone out and then just like go 180 degrees behind you. But you can slowly change your bearing from 30 degrees to 60 degrees to 90 degrees over the course of about a second. So basically, he's like swinging, and his momentum is carrying him forward, and then he can take another swing. Really trying to get that berserker thing going here. So if he hits no enemies or terrain with that first swing, he can continue to do that. And then he can cast the skill again. And these further swings will deal extra damage, 40% for each one, stacking to 80. And they'll also grant more rage when they eventually hit an enemy.
That's some complex swinging.
Yeah. Finally, if he ever swings directly in front of him, if you take the center path at any point, instead of just taking like a wide swing to the side, Tryndamere will tomahawk the ground in a small cone in front of him after a slight delay, dealing 1.5 times the damage that a side swing would have done, and stunning enemies for 3/4 of a second, plus another 1/4 second for every previous side swing he's taken. So if you take side swing, and then a tomahawk, you can stun him for up to 1.25.
Okay.
This small dash cannot go through walls. Let me see if any of my other details are really important to say. The first side swing will ignore collision if enemies are right on top of you, so that you have a way to not immediately just be stopped. You'll have a way to actually take the 3 swings if you want to. Although enemies can jump in front of the first or second swing to stop you from doing that if they think you're trying to use this for mobility. This is just kind of a new kind of movement skill for the game. Kind of a triple dash in multiple short fixed vectors. And what I think that's going to do is it'll create a slightly out-of-control feeling that would be fitting for a barbarian raider like him. It'll provide a thoughtful trade-off between dashing to the side to power up a huge third slash, whether that's a side swing or a tomahawk, or just dashing straight ahead on the first one for a quicker, easier attempt at damage and a stun. Obviously, if you tomahawk on the first one, and you go for the CC and the extra damage, you're only getting 1 use of this skill. Side strikes could also be used as a skillful way to gain a little bit of mobility for chases or escapes, as long as there's no terrain in your path. So, what do you think, man?
Well, I didn't really say anything about the passive. First thing I like to say is in regards to his passive, I feel like the Fury generation would probably take too long if he's just with one person in the laning phase. I feel like it would take too long for him to get it up if during the laning, assuming he's still going top. Sometimes.
That's what Ash said.
Yeah, I feel like against just one person with the way you have it worked out, now that you can't grind it off minions and monsters, I feel
Yeah.
like it would probably take too long to get it off of in trades, you know.
Okay, that is fair. And let me just, I guess, spoil a little bit ahead. A couple of his other skills do actually give him ways to gain a little bit more fury.
Okay, and then the second thing is, I don't know if his Q is supposed to be his, like, bread and butter skill like my Q was, but I feel like the cooldown's probably too high. But it is a crazy dash ability, so...
Um, that and the spinning slash, which I saved as well, are both kind of supposed to together be the bread and butter damage abilities.
Okay, so there's another spin in this kit?
Yeah. So the Q is not an actual spin. He's kind of like lunging forward a little bit, and just a
Okay.
little bit. Yeah. Or forward and off to the side in kind of an uncontrolled way.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that's reasonable. I think there's probably, if you look at a lot of the champs like him, they probably do have lower cooldowns. I was afraid of kind of packing too much power in and giving him 3 dashes more than once every 14 seconds. But yeah, your point's well taken.
All
All
right.
right. So the W is called Mocking Shout. I managed to save what I think is the heart of this ability, but I changed it a lot. It's a complete mechanical rework of how this works. This is now a very long 32 to 16 second cooldown. It is 2 activations. The first one is targeted at an enemy champion that you can see within 1200 range, which is pretty long. The second activation, there's no target necessary. So on the first activation, Tryndamere challenges a targeted champion, allowing him to reactivate the skill during the next 3 seconds. Once you've used your first cast on an enemy champion, that target will receive an indicator that they've been challenged, and it will also show the direction that Tryndamere is in relation to them. And the reason for that is because they don't want to be looking away from him. On the second cast, so you use the second cast anytime in that 3-second window, and after you use the second cast, there's a 0.75 second delay with no indication that it was used. And after that delay, if the target is facing away from Tryndamere, they're slowed by 40 to 80% for 4 seconds. Tryndamere gains 30 to 70% bonus movement speed. Obviously, these are based on rank. While moving towards that enemy for 4 seconds. So they're much slower, and you're much faster running at them. And Tryndamere also gains 13 to 25 extra fury the first time he damages that enemy within 10 seconds. If the enemy is immobilized at any point during the delay, which would obviously make it impossible for them to try and mind game turn back towards you, all the benefits are reduced by 2/3. So you can't just like wait for a Morgana to bind someone while they're looking away from you and then cast it at them. Finally, the spell's cooldown is refreshed if Tryndamere scores a tank down on an enemy champion that he's recently damaged within the last 5 seconds. So what this does is it forces enemies, especially enemies that are fleeing, to play kind of a mind game of figuring out when you're actually going to activate the second part of your mocking shout, and actually try and turn back towards you momentarily to no-sell this effect. Because if they're looking towards you at the end of that 0.75 second delay, nothing happens. It definitely will allow a visceral rush in terms of running down faraway enemies. 4 seconds of 70% movement speed at max rank, plus they're slowed by 80%, will allow you to chase them down from almost anywhere. It gives him a good way to rush into enemy lines, allowing for a more Juggernaut playstyle. I feel that all Juggernauts in the game, talking your Garens, your Shyvanas that are not, AP bitches, Dariuses, they usually want a way to get into the enemy lines, and that makes the rest of their kit useful. And importantly, I got rid of that dumb AD cripple that just doesn't belong on Tryndamere. Yeah?
It wasn't a cripple, it just reduced their attack damage.
Right. I consider that a type of cripple, but yes, I hear you. I got rid of the AD reduction against enemy champions that are nearby. And it requires a little bit more skill and a little bit more preparation to actually hit this slow against enemies now. But you're rewarded with a much higher slow, as well as you get a lot of movement speed towards them and more fury.
I like I like what you did to this, trying to keep mocking shout. My first take when I was looking at this kid, I'm like, this is one of the most dated abilities in the game, and I'm like, this is one of the ones that just has to go. But I respect that you tried to turn it into something that feels more interactable. I feel like the reward is almost too powerful, though. That's
I feel like it's too good.
it's a hell of a slow and a hell of a movement speed bonus. I feel like that's so obnoxious. I feel that's probably too strong. I mean, he might as well be Master Yi at that point if he's getting resets. So, and Master Yi can't slow you.
I hear you. And it is just against one target instead of all the targets in the area. But,
yeah, but if he gets a takedown, then he can just challenge somebody new, correct?
Exactly. He can. Yeah. So you would probably reduce the numbers on this one?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of sounds like Master Yi's Highlander almost. It's that, yeah, I think it is a little too powerful.
Okay.
It's way too much stick-to-itiveness.
Yep.
Gaining the extra fury, yeah, I think that was definitely warranted. You know.
Yeah, maybe we could even, be a little bit less of the movement speed and a little bit more fury when he actually goes in, rather than just uses that as utility. Cool. All right. We've got the spinning slash, and I'm keeping most of the mechanics of this ability actually. I was actually surprised when I reworked Tryndamere how much I felt like I was able to keep. It was just kind of the intention in his design, because he is an old champ, wasn't really there.
Hold on, all these new colors are confusing me.
So whenever I guess the people watching can't see this, but whenever I keep an ability mostly the same, I go red for nerfs, green for buffs, purple for exploration, yeah. And the blue is something that could be like a nerf or a buff, depending on how you look at it. Anyhow, what I'm doing here, I'm increasing the cooldown by 1 second, so slightly longer cooldown. Increasing the damage. It used to be 80 to 200 plus 130% bonus AD plus 80% AP. I increased the base damage to 120 to 280. I changed the ratio to 120% of his total AD, which is a buff. And took down the AP to 60% because we don't need AP Tryndamere. I just want to reward the Fury stacks a little bit. So longer cooldown, a little bit more damage. I removed the cooldown reduction when Tryndamere lands a critical strike because, like you, I don't think that Tryndamere should be a critical strike champion. Simple as that. I did give him a cooldown reduction by half if he uses this while he's at 100 rage. Pretty hard to do, but in some of these objective fights in particular, or in very long team fights, particularly the ones where he can hit his W twice, it's reasonable for him to get to 100. And, certainly a 4.5 second spin would be very good. Finally, if Spinning Slash hits an enemy champion or epic monster, Tryndamere will restore 4 to 10% plus 3% per 100 AP that he has of Tryndamere's missing health. So this is a little bit of the Bloodlust, I think was the old name of the ability, right?
Yep.
I'm trying to get the heal from Bloodlust back in here in some form, without making it too easy or too cheesy. So he actually has to go in and hit people with his Spinning Slash now. Also, he doesn't get the +2 rage per enemy hit because he's already getting +5 from his passive. So my intention here is just to reward Tryndamere for using the spin aggressively while at low health with that missing health heal. Reward him further for building rage, and by taking down some of the cooldown reduction, as well as by notching up the cooldown by a second, Tryndamere will be a little bit less of a ballerina in general.
Alright.
Alright. And finally, His ultimate, the thing that I always complain about. My most hated skill in the game. The dumbest thing Riot has ever done. Maybe. I kept it, kind of.
That's shocking.
Um, I'm keeping some of the same general mechanics from his Undying range. It's gonna have the same cooldown of 120 to 80. The Fury gained used to be 50 to 100. Now it's 10. The minimum health threshold is kind of gone. I've set it to 0, and replaced it with the fact that he's immune to death for the duration. I've definitely added an indicator that shows how much longer he has remaining. And I'm adding 2 new effects. So, first of all, and this is the most important game-changing thing, Tryndamere is immune to death for a duration equal to 1 second per 10 Fury that he has when he uses this skill. That does include the 10 Fury gained when he uses it. So this will have a minimum duration, essentially, if he hasn't racked up his Fury in the last 5 seconds, of 1 second. It will have a maximum duration if he's actually managed to hit that dream of 100 Fury of 10 seconds. At the end of this duration, Tryndamere will heal 10 to 18%, based on the ultimate's rank, of the damage that he dealt to champions during Undying Rage. That also means that if Tryndamere took damage but dealt no damage during Undying Rage, like he was just using it as he was being plinked by the enemy team, using it as like a cheap way to, live until he can escape, he could actually die immediately at the end of its duration, which is kind of funny. I do think that the change from a fixed 5 seconds of uptime to a duration based on the amount of rage you were able to build is huge, because not only will this encourage skillful play in terms of building the rage meter up properly, but it will also encourage Tryndamere to build enough like a bruiser that he can actually survive long enough to get those long trades, build up 50, 60, 80, 100 rage in extended champion combat, and then cash that in for a long duration of Undying Rage. It could still be used to escape from losing fights, but it now requires Tryndamere to turn back and damage enemies at least once if he doesn't want to just die immediately at the end of it. And finally, I think that the addition of a visual indicator is a huge quality of life thing for everybody in the game. Because normally people just hit Tryndamere and then they find out afterwards that he still can't die.
Well, that's surprising.
I surprised even myself a little bit, but I think that by having a minimum duration essentially of 1 second, we're making this skill a lot less cheap.
Yeah.
Do you feel like it's still gonna go too long too often?
It's hard to gauge how consistent it'd be for him to get to 100 Fury, considering he can only stack it against champions. So,
Yeah.
I guess that means that.
I think a more common amount of time would probably be somewhere in like the 4 to 6, maybe 7 second range, and that's only in a team fight too. You might be talking like 3 to 5 seconds in lane or a duel.
I feel like if he ever got kind of started to get behind in lane, he would always have like a really bad ultimate, because that means he wouldn't be trading to get his Fury higher, so he'd always have a really weak ultimate.
Yeah, as a fighter or a Juggernaut style, he's definitely punished for getting too far behind in lane.
Which means if he's ever in a position to be tower dived, his ultimate's probably going to be really worthless.
Ooh, that's actually a good point. That's actually a good point. Do you think that's a bad thing?
I think it kind of compounds his weak Fury generation a bit too hard. And I think an ultimate should be something that's like, you should view as almost like a comeback mechanic, consistently somehow, or a way to make plays. I understand why you did all this, but the fact that he needs to do damage to get a big heal, and he needs to already have a lot of Fury to have a longer ultimate, I feel is probably a bit too punishing.
That's a really interesting take. I like it actually. Can you think of any way that we could keep this kind of style but allow it to be less punishing when he's behind?
Uh, I'm just really surprised you kept it. And
I surprised myself a little bit too, yeah.
I thought you would do kind of a really light throwback touch to it, like I did with it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah, I don't know.
I think the idea of being able to like survive a long time and cheat death is kind of core to his identity. So I didn't want to throw that if I didn't have to. Um, yeah, I just wanted to make it a lot more skillful, a lot less cheap, and a lot more clear.
Huh.
And I feel like I did that, but I also feel like there are probably some design flaws, like you just mentioned, that he becomes very feast or famine.
How much time did you spend on coming up with this one?
About a week. Oh, you mean just this ability?
No, no, the whole thing.
About a week. I mean, not like every hour of my week, but I was thinking about it constantly for a week.
Wait a minute, you didn't spend every hour on this?
I'm sorry. I know you're paying me so much to do this.
I really like you, Jason, but I got to
Mhm.
be honest. I think this is your weakest one yet. I think
Okay.
it's either as weak as the Blitzcrank or even weaker. And for a few different reasons, I feel like you didn't take enough chances. I feel like you didn't disincentivize enough for him to being a binary champion. Like basically, someone could still build him the
Mm-hmm.
same as they build normal Tryndamere, and yes, he doesn't have as many. He doesn't get the extra crit, but basically, you've allowed him to be even more punishing if he still chose to build a dedicated auto attacker build because of the mobility you've given him on his Q and the more powerful mocking shot in terms of chase potential that you've given him.
It's slightly more mobility, but he will blow up right away if you try to do that.
That's true. I almost feel like
Therefore, I think it would be ill-advised.
I feel like you've made his peak even more
Huh?
unhealthy, but at the same time, I feel like you've given him an even more punishing floor. So I almost feel like you made him worse in a way, but worse in a more interesting way for sure.
Oh, thank you.
Because
When you call him binary, do you mean that he kind of only has one thing that he does, or do you mean that he's either really good or really bad?
I mean that he's so stat checky, he's like all in
Huh?
you, or he's dying in the all in, you know.
Mm.
And I feel like with the way his ultimate is so predicated on being on the offensive, that he's either going to be an even more annoying split pusher now that he has another movement speed thing, or he's going to be absolutely terrible from behind because now he doesn't even have quite. He doesn't have the crit synergy, and he doesn't have as consistent of an ultimate because he needs to do
Yeah.
damage and he needs to get fury, and
I
that
mean, you make
means
some good points that it would be a very punishing floor.
I'm gonna have. I don't remember what you think. You remember what I gave your Blitzcrank? What
I
was
think
it?
you gave the Blitzcrank a 4.
A 4. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Jason. I'm gonna have to give this.
Wow.
I'm gonna have to give this a 3.5.
A dagger to my heart, Chrissy.
But 4 out of 5 stars for making the mocking shout, keeping it, and making it much better. So
All right.
unfortunately, I'm gonna have to downgrade you for lack of ambition for the passive and his E and his ultimate though.
I mean, I'm trying to rework a champ, not make a completely new one.
Well, yours is kind of a remaster. Mine was a rework. No, I don't think. I think they would implement yours and not even call it a rework. They would call yours an update.
Oh, okay.
Yours is a
Yeah,
gameplay
thank you.
update. I mean, you replace his Q heal with his kind of 3-direction triple spin or triple move fast and slice thing that you
Yeah.
did with your Q. I mean, outside of that, I feel like this is kind of an update, you know, of the existing Tryndamere. Yes, he
Yeah.
has less of a synergy to build critical strike, but with this current setup, I see no reason why he wouldn't go from current Tryndamere to current Jax with what you did. I mean, instead of
All
building
right.
crit, he's just going to go to like Bork Trinity Force kind of stuff, or like Jax does. So I feel like you kind of, I feel like you You made him better in a way, which was not healthy, and then you made him worse in a way, which was also not healthy.
All right, all right. I get the point. Okay, next time when we're like reworking like Callista or something like that, I'll just basically copy all of Maokai's abilities, and you'll give me a 9 out of 10.
It wasn't about
Hmm.
what it wasn't about like the depth of your rework like mine was. It was just about how I feel like you didn't solve the problems. You know.
No, I guess we probably see different problems. Yeah, like I've always thought
I
that his
think we both agree
problems
on
were
why
all
he
the
sucks.
cheesy glass cannon builds, and the way that basically he doesn't need to actually accomplish anything in order to just like laugh in your face as he just right clicks you over and over.
But
And I feel
I
like I
don't see
saw
an
that
incentive for someone to not do that with your build though.
to just like mindlessly right click without using his abilities that much.
Well, no, you gave him more chase potential essentially, but you also didn't disincentivize an auto attack dependent build at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I think he would still definitely use some autos here. Particularly to gain the fury. But a lot of the damage would be coming from his skills instead of the autos.
I don't know.
He's not building. He's not building crit and as much attack speed anymore.
Another thing,
Um,
I feel like opening with
mhm.
spinning slash and then doing the 3 Qs would be just too stupidly easy for him to escape like a lot of situations. Because if he does one spinning slash, then all he has to go is like left, then right, then middle, and he's kind of gone, you know?
Uh, yeah, but then like, what does he use to actually be useful in that fight?
Well, this is just for him being too easy to like get away, which makes him even more incentivized to split push constantly.
Literally, all he's ever trying to do is get away. But yeah, I see the split pushing point. I still think the solution there is usually just kill him.
I do like the part you added where he gets a heal based on the damage he does in his the ultimate you kept. I guess I'm just really surprised you kept so much of his kit.
Yeah, I thought that I saw a lot that I could salvage here.
I had the
It was.
complete opposite. I was like, they ain't almost nothing worth salvaging.
Yeah, you just scrapped everything and turned him into like a really cool team fight tank.
Not
So
everything. I kept the Fury, I kept a mobility spell, I kept the death immunity for a
even
little
the
bit.
Fury just works a completely different way in yours.
Well, he still has to auto attack people to generate it.
Okay. But yeah, two very different sides of the fork in the path.
I'm gonna have to give this my bronze seal of disgust.
Well, despite the thumbs down logo I'm getting from you, I did have a lot of fun doing this with you.
Oh yeah, definitely. I like to see the differences. I think your Malphite one has definitely been the best one by far.
And I'm looking forward to hearing what you want to do for next month. I guess you'll tell me after the session.
Did are you the one that picked Tryndamere?
I am the one that picked Tryndamere.
Okay, well, I'll have to give some thought because I feel like the three we have done have been some of the biggest stinkers.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, okay, I'll have to give that some thought. I haven't thought about who I'd want to do the next one on.
All right. If you're listening, let us know if you liked mine more than Chrissy did. Please let us know.
Wouldn't be hard. Whoop, 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 whoop. All right, that does it for
Yeah. Hope you
episode
enjoyed this.
3.
We'll catch you next time.
Yep. All right, welcome to part 3. Have some internet problems or Discord's freaking out. It's probably my fault since my internet's been really ghetto the last few months. Next up, we got Silas, who's getting more mana. I actually do think he's pretty mana hungry early on. I don't think it's his problem in the late game, though.
Yeah, agreed. He actually does run out of mana in a lot of the early trades early on. It's the only way that he can really fight, and this will let him basically use one more skill every time he comes back from Biss.
Yep.
He'll have one more skill before he runs Zoom. It's a small buff, but it's a nice buff for him.
Yeah, not a lot to say about that. Next up, we got some stat buffs to Tristana. Let's see, we got less health, more armor per level, and
less magic
less
resist.
MR. Yeah, I don't really know what to think about that.
Basically, they went nowhere with this. This is like some corporate executive basically hiring a bunch of accountants to make it look like the money went to one division instead of another, so that they were like profitable. But really, it didn't do anything to the business.
I'd say 3 of these changes are pretty meaningless. I think the only one of consequence is her gaining base armor, because for an 80 carry, any bit of armor to mitigate the flat shred of lethality, I think, is impactful. So I think that's the only one of consequence.
Yeah, that's 4 base armor. At the beginning of the game, you're probably taking more damage from the support than you are from the ADC.
But serrated Dirk is like 10 armor spend, basically.
Yeah, later on. But even that, means she's taking maybe like 3% less damage, but she also has 3% less health. This really feels like a nothing burger to me. The one thing I might guess, and I haven't seen it much lately, but have you seen Tristana mid, maybe? I'm thinking maybe they're trying to make her worse against mages?
That was actually a thing like 2 years ago. People were busting out like Tristana and Lucian. Just because they both are so fucking aggro and have such an all-in against the mages. I
haven't seen it recently, but I'm wondering if that could possibly be the case, because as far as ADC Tristana, in the laning phase and really through the entire game, this is nothing. This is like a zero-sum change.
It's not a buff.
Yeah, I really think this is a zero-sum change. The only thing I can guess is they're trying to make her worse against mages mid, and even then, I haven't seen her mid more than once or twice in the last year.
Alright.
Another weird one.
I would say it's a net nerf instead of power neutral, as you like to say.
Okay. I would say it's completely power neutral myself.
Well, I think the base armor is more impactful in the laning phase, even if the armor growth eventually compensates for that. So that's the part of the game.
They're giving her more armor and more armor growth.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying it's more impactful.
Yeah, I'm just saying there's no like compensation. The compensation is they're getting rid of the MR and they're getting rid of health.
I hear you.
Okay. So you think it's a buff? I think it's a nothing burger.
Okie dokie. Next up, we got Wukong, and they decided to make his Q cost no mana. That's okay, because it's always up anyway. And then there's like a bug on my screen. I assume this is a change to his W clone thing. The text on my screen is kind of messed up with this ability for some reason.
Warrior Trister?
Yeah.
It says mana cost is reduced to 60 to 40 from 80 to 40. So at the earlier ranks, it costs less mana. So this is just basically more mana for Weaselwoo all around.
Yeah, nobody really plays him top anymore. He's basically just a cheese lord full AD jungler now.
Yeah, it's mostly in the jungler, and more often than not, I actually see him succeed there.
There was a time where this champion was kind of like an off-tank or a bruiser in the old days. Those times. He's moved on to Talon levels of play, though.
Actually in Arena, I've seen him kind of go bruiser with some success as well. But yeah, as far as the Rift, he's more of a burst assassin type.
Okie dokie. That'll do it for the champion changes. Next up, some very inconsequential item changes. Ace, first up, we've got Axiom Arc, which got a big nerf in the other patch that really limited its user base, but now they're giving the baseline effect a big, or I guess a bit of a buff.
Didn't we decide that... Sorry, go on.
Well, the rest of the portion of the ability now scales only with lethality now, where it was strong enough to be picked up as a one-off item on just about any AD champion that wanted to abuse it. It's probably still the case that this is still kind of not worth getting on anyone that doesn't build like full lethality, though, even with this buff.
Well, I think when we looked at this change, we actually worked out the numbers, and because it gives you 18 lethality in itself, it was like you get one more lethality item, and you're breaking even, and then beyond that, you actually do better than when it used to refund. Was it 25% of your total cooldown? Was it 30?
I don't remember, but it was good enough to be a one-off item on someone who would not build any other lethality items.
Yeah. It's definitely worse as a one-off now. But what we're going to see with all of these item changes is that everything except Duskblade of Drakthar for Assassins basically picked up a small buff, and then Duskblade got a nerf. So just for that, I think there's going to be a lot of Assassins shifting from Duskblade, which was just so good, to Axiom Arc. And yeah, now that it's giving you a 10% cooldown plus 0.4% per lethality, which just from this one item is another 7%, this really isn't bad.
Well, I'd like to say one thing. You said switch, where Axiom Arc is not a mythic like Duskblade is. So there's no like this or that.
Yeah, speaking
decision.
of Duskblade.
Well, you made it sound like both of them are mythics and you have to choose one or the other. One's a legendary and one's a mythic, so... Know what I mean? Oh, for God's sakes. Alright, here we are with part 4 of 16 or 13.16, and last thing I said is you were saying how they would have to switch from Duskblade to Axiom Arc, and before it cut out I explained that only Duskblade is a mythic and Axiom Arc is a legendary, so you don't have to switch. You can still get them both.
Right. That's right. Axiom Arc's not a mythic. I keep thinking it is.
It was Prowler's Claw that got downgraded.
Yes. I don't know why I was thinking that. Sorry, but yeah. So I think Axiom Arc is still looking pretty good in a lot of builds now, especially now that it's 10% lethality plus 7% just for its baseline value with the lethality it gives you. And I said 10% lethality, I meant the cooldown reduction. Plus bonus for all the other lethality that you stack up. Like, if your champ likes being able to ultimate twice during a fight, this is pretty good.
Yeah, I think it's a cool item. I just feel like it's a little too niche. I wish there was like a version other types of champions could take.
And by the way, for everybody listening to us continually cut out and having to do this video in 4 parts, you should have listened to me at the beginning. I told you to skip this one. But thank you for listening all the way through anyway.
Alright, next up we'll talk about Duskblade now, where the fade and targetability thing now has a 30-second cooldown instead of 10.
Yeah.
That's probably a good thing, but then the bonus damage went down a tiny bit. At one point it was like 25%, then got nerfed to 20, now it's getting hit again. Overall though, for the jump in there and kill someone people, the fact that it just triggers at least once is the important thing.
Yeah, I think this is actually a fairly big nerf to the Duskblade, and I'll tell you why. While generally in a really intense bursty team fight, you're only going to be able to proc this once anyway, whether it's 30 seconds or 10 seconds. What a lot of the really good assassins do is they can proc it once in a team fight, get out of that team fight, and then as it breaks up and people are trying to back and buy their items, or as they're trying to move on to an objective, they find another target, they pick them off there, and then any of their teammates that were near them, if you've got the Duskblade proccing a second time, you can get away from them. And that was actually a nice thing that a lot of the really good assassins did. And I found them doing that in a lot of my games, and honestly, I thought it was pretty cool. Like, I totally agree that Duskblade was an overpowered item and it needed a nerf of some sort, but they nerfed the coolest part of the item. I would have really liked them to just take away some of the, just a little bit of the stats instead, and let the really good assassins do their cool assassin things.
I think it was just fine. I only thought it was broken prior to like the AD item giant overhaul when it would constantly reset. That's when I thought it was too strong.
I don't know. I don't know.
And that's basically as strong as Kozik's ultimate.
Almost every assassin is going this as their mythic, and even a lot of people who are supposed to be fighters, people like Wukong, are taking things like this. It really was just it was crowding out a lot of the other assassin items and even some of the other AD mythics that were not designed for ADCs, obviously. So I'm glad it got nerfed, but I really wish they would have nerfed the stats rather than the coolest part of Duskblade. That's all.
Okie dokie, next up we got Prowler's Claw, and I actually like this change. It's such kind of a not a super impactful effect like it used to have, that crazy dash where you would dash through people. Those days are gone. Now this is basically just a I kind of think of it as like just an extra keystone almost, what this item does. That's what it feels like.
Yeah,
you just get bonus damage for dashing. Yeah, I feel like that's what, sudden impact, kind of the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's resetting every few seconds and has obviously a very easy condition for a lot of champions to proc. Yeah, they're just improving a little bit, and which is kind of what they did with all these other assassin items that are not called Duskblade.
Yep.
That's all I gotta say.
And then lastly, we've got Serpent's Fang and Umbral Glaive, both gained some lethality. These are kind of the Joker utility lethality items that nobody buys anyway. The ones that you find on like Senna and Pike because they're just so poverty stricken. So now they get a little more bang for their buck, but none of the mainstream mid laners ever take these basically.
Yeah, I agree with you in general. Serpent's Fang definitely has some niche uses in certain games. For if you're going against a set that's getting like 400% of his HP as a shield, if you're going against even like a Vex or something like that, can get a pretty big shield. If you can use the Serpent's Fang against a couple champions that are putting really big shields on themselves, it pays off for itself. But I agree.
I don't really think it's good enough at what it does.
They've buffed it a few times over the years, and I think if you find the right team to use it against, it's actually a quite good item as a fifth item or so.
Yeah.
Umbral Glaive, yeah, I don't see that very often. The Blackout assassin item used to be very popular, but once it was moved to Umbral Glaive, hasn't really been seen much. But, worth pointing out, this is more lethality, and if you're using that in combination with Axiom Arc, hey, pretty good.
Yep. Well, that does it for 13.16 finally, and we better get the hell out of here.
Before we have to do a part 5. Yeah, we're out. See ya.
Alright. See you guys next time.